Salutations Rangers, General Rally 101 back at you again with some more lore. And today's video, boys and gals, we're back with what our people get wrong about X series. And we're talking about another Primarch. But this time, it's gonna be a very, religious experience, shall I say. Maybe, kinda, depends on how crazy you want to get. Because today, we're talking about Lorgar Aurelian. In my opinion, one of, if not the most misunderstood Primarch. Not necessarily in who or what he is, but more or less why he does the things that he does. So, ladies and gentlemen, strap in and buckle up, and let's get cracking like an own with today's video. TLDR time. Lorgar Aurelian is the Primarch of the 17th Legion Word Bearers, previously known as the Imperial Heralds. And when Lorgar and his brothers were thrown into the magical wonders of space via the Squid Man, probably, he would land upon the world of Colchis. Colchis was a hyper-religious world. Basically, imagine the Catholic Church, but a planet. Beatings and all, as well as other stuff, maybe, probably, I wouldn't put it past them. And basically, this world worshipped the four main deities, which may or may not have been chaos-related or chaos-adjacent. Never really clarified, but it is assumed so. Lorgar, however, would have visions of a giant golden god, the one true god. Thus, did he pull a Martin Luther and nail his 95 thesis as to why chaos is gay. Oh, how ironic that statement would be. And it would cause a massive civil war, with eventually Lorgar conquering the planet and replacing their polytheism with his monotheism. And he would then be visited by another vision that the great golden god would descend and meet him eventually. And lo and behold, it would come to pass that the great deity would appear. And it turns out it was an atheist. Lamau. Biggie would pitch up and he would see Lorgar and all this nonsense and he would just be like, okay, that's weird, here's a legion, go and do legion things, bye. And from there, Lorgar and his people would continue to begin subjugating the entirety of the galaxy. Or at least doing their part, as the Imperial Heralds were renamed the Bearers of the Word. And this would continue for quite some time. But Lorgar was a bit on the slow end, because he valued quality over quantity. But unlike Bobby G, it was a different type of quality in of itself. Biggie would then see this, get really pissy for one reason or another, Lord Almighty knows why, and then he would grab Bobby G and they would go to quote-unquote censure Lorgar. And lo and behold, the great golden god of Colchis, accompanied by the warrior kings of Ultramar, would descend upon the planet, and upon the most holiest of cities would he break the Legion, burning their soul, and destroying their faith utterly. And there did they lay, once mighty, fervent, zealous warriors, pious in every regard, now shattered, broken, and unending. Their god had abandoned them, thus did they search for a new one, yet in their search for one, they would find four. And from here, the corruption of the Legion would begin. Erebus, being the right bastard that he is, together with Corferon would introduce Lorgar and the rest of the Legion to the worship of Chaos, the true gods. And we all know the rest from there. The heresy would begin, Horus being corrupted, and eventually everything would go tits up with the Emperor actually becoming a god upon the Golden Throne. Oh irony, how sweet thou art. From there, Lorgar would become a demon Primarch, and become the first champion and first prince of Chaos Undivided. And as to what exactly he's been doing since then, not really much. He's existed a little bit, he fought the Demon Bird, that was pretty cool, and we're just waiting on the next part of his story. So that's the TLDR Mr. Lorgar Aurelian. But now, ladies and gentlemen, what do people get wrong about Mr. Lorgar Aurelian? And that's the fact that very few people seem to acknowledge that he was betrayed. And I'm not talking about a little betrayal. I mean, he was betrayed since the get-go. Of course, the most notable example are his Legion in of itself. You take a look at the Legion High Commands of pretty much most other legions. And this does indeed range. You have things like the Ultramarine Salamanders and Blood Angels, which are basically family and love each other, to things like the Dark Angels, Night Lords, and Iron Warriors, who are begrudging at the very best, but still loyal. Lorgar is the only Primarch to be betrayed by his own high command. And I mean from the very get-go. Yes, I know that Typhus was indeed the one who caused the Death God to downfall, but that was only at the end of the heresy. When I say this, and what I mean by this, is that Lorgar, from the very beginning, had no one to rely on. He had literally no one. For those of you who don't know, Corferon was his adoptive father. His adoptive father was a piece of shit. Remember when I mentioned beatings? I wasn't joking. Literally, as a child growing up, Corferon would beat the ever-living shit out of Lorgar. It really is the classic stereotypical nonsense of, I'm gonna beat the gay out of you, son. That was literally it. If Lorgar did anything that Corferon perceived as wrong, he would beat him. More specifically, we get instances where Lorgar would do exactly what Corferon wanted, but because it didn't get the exact outcome that Conferon wanted, he would blame Lorgar and then beat Lorgar. And it just goes to show just the character of Lorgar and of himself. Because people always say, oh, Lorgar's a bitch, Lorgar's a bitch, Lorgar's a bitch. No, he's compassionate. Eventually that compassion would turn into bitch-madeness, but it didn't start out like that. Just think about it. If you have this dude who keeps on berating you, who keeps on beating you, and you're literally a demigod, why not just kill the motherfucker? Mortarion would have, Curse probably would have, but Lorgar didn't. Why? Because at the end of the day, that was his dad, and he wanted to make him proud. Again, compassion. So you take a look at the two main, Lorgar's right and left hand. Corpheron, his first captain, and Erebus, his first chaplain. Corpheron is a psychopathic idiot who is only obsessed with power and prestige. He doesn't care about chaos, doesn't care about the Legion, doesn't care about religion, doesn't care about anything. He just wants what he wants and downbeat everyone else, including his adoptive son. And then of course we have Erebus, the literal incarnation of malicious psychopathy made manifest. Those are your two men, those are you two dudes, those are the boys in your back corner. And we are surprised that Lorgar fucked shit up? Think about it. Lorgar basically had no one. He had no one he could rely on. Oh, what about his brothers? His brothers hated him. His brothers despised him. No one liked him. Why? Because he was a religious fanatic. He was that weird Christian kid who always talked about Jesus, and you're just like, bro, we're trying to enjoy the movie. No one liked him. He had no peers. And then of course you have the Emperor. The Emperor absolutely failed him. And here I'm really going to be talking about this. When I say that the Emperor failed him, I don't mean Monarchia. That was a major fuck up in every single aspect of the word, yes. But what I mean is that the Emperor knew what Lorgar was. Not what he became, but what he was meant to be. For those of you who don't know, Lorgar's Primarch power is the power of oratory, and a lot of people tend to sleep on this because a lot of people are stupid. Sorry, as a fellow orator, it always makes me upset, but it's the power of talking to people. When Lorgar speaks, everyone will listen. Whether you want to or not, you will listen to what he has to say. And it's not that he forces you, it's that this man's words are dripped in silken honey, spiced with perfection incarnate. And remember, he is the guy who started the whole heresy. He's the guy who eventually got Horus in, and all the other Primarchs. He convinced 9 of his brothers to join. Now people always talk about Horus and Horus being the one, and Horus being the great guy. Now Horus was indeed a leader, but don't sleep on Mr. Lorgar. Lorgar was the greatest orator of the Primarchs. His Primarch power was literally to be able to convince people. And again, I mentioned it earlier, the planets that Lorgar conquered were indeed a few, but they were some of the most staunchly loyal to the Imperium period. There was no, I repeat, no cases of rebellion under Lorgar and his planets that were conquered. No cases. Now granted, that's because he wiped the slate clean and restarted, but it still bears mentioning. Yes, it took them a slow amount of progress, but when they conquered a world, it was conquered. Lorgar is an orator. He was created to be an orator. You take a look at his sons before the coming of Lorgar, they were the Imperial Heralds. They were the mouthpiece of the Emperor. Lorgar was supposed to be the mouthpiece of the Emperor. The Emperor made him to be his voice made manifest. That was his duty, that was his whole thing. So Big E, seeing that he grew up on a hyper-religious planet, Big E saw where he grew up, Big E saw what he was, Big E saw what he did. But what does Big E choose to do? He chooses to ignore him. He doesn't sit down with him, he doesn't talk to him, he doesn't make him the head of Imperial propaganda, he doesn't use him, he just throws him away. And after 100 years, Big E is there, surprised Pikachu face. What? My hyper-religious son is teaching people that I'm a god, even though I told him not to? What? The man with faith didn't believe me when I told him not to? Shocked. And then he unnecessarily punishes Lorgar. Absolutely unnecessarily. Lorgar did not do anything worthy of that. Burning his prized capital city to the ground, killing countless civilians, and psychically making the entire Legion and their Primarch bow to a fellow brother Legion. What did he do? What did Lorgar do to deserve this, Big E? Why would you treat him like this? Your most loyal, staunch son. Because he doesn't see you as a father, he sees you as his literal god. He would never betray you until you betrayed him. Your son, who was meant to be the architect of oratory, the man who was indoctrinated his entire life by faith. You had the makings of the most loyal, most powerful propagandist, someone who could speak to anyone and convince anyone, and turn the most ardent hater of your Imperium into something so beautiful and loving that they would be loyal to you for generations. And we see that, because lo and behold, the Lectivio Divitatus, that is Lorgar's work. And what does the Imperium do? It worships the Emperor as a god, and the Imperium is some of the most fanatically loyal people in the galaxy. Big E saw all of this and threw it away. He threw it away. Now yes, I am aware that there is a thing that Big E had a time limit for the Great Crusade, that he knew that the big bad was coming and he had to prepare. But still, how does this further Lorgar's aids? How does this change anything? Why would you choose this course of action? Looking into it, people always complain about Lorgar. They say that Lorgar is a bitch, he's a coward, he's weak, he's a pussy, etc. And, you know, he is a lot of that to some extent. The biggest argument that I've seen as to why people despise Lorgar is that they see him as weak. When he found out about chaos, when he found out about it existed, he immediately went for it. He didn't stand, he didn't fight, he just chose to follow chaos. He was subservient. That is something that people despise. And, you know, I agree. I too would despise that, assuming that you have no choice, just going with it and just bending over and accepting it. But in a vacuum, that makes sense. That hatred for Lorgar is understandable, but you can't look at it in a vacuum. You have to look at it with a broader context of the picture involved. People always say, oh, why didn't Lorgar make a choice? But that's the thing, Lorgar was never taught he had a choice to make. There is an argument of nature versus nurture, and both of them are valid. But in my opinion, nurture plays far more importance than nature. You take a look at people, and you take a look at people in the world. How they grew up, where they grew up, who taught them what, affects them incredibly so. People can be taught about strength, but whereas one person is taught that strength is purely for punishing the weak, another can be taught that strength is meant to protect the weak. Both value strength, but for completely different reasons. In terms of nature, both of them are naturally strong, but their strength has been nurtured in a different manner. Lorgar had no one. Lorgar was betrayed by everyone. Lorgar had nothing. Now, whilst I'm not excusing his behavior, he's a bitch. And he decided, oh, woe is me, look at this, all that, not. Yeah, no, he deserves that, right? That's fucked up. I'm not saying it's not. I'm an Ultramarines fan at the end of the day, and Lord Almighty knows what he and the fucking World Eaters did to our place. I mean, bona Deum. Sanguis pro sanguine. Si tibi, nunca est sanguisinaris. Sisque quandorum sit mandorum andre. Cretum barbarus. Where was I? Ah yes, Lorgar. Lorgar never had anyone to teach him anything. He had no one. He had no mentors from his legion. He had no mentors from his homeworld. He didn't have the Emperor. He didn't have any of his brothers. He had no one. You know, speaking of Guilliman, you take a look at Guilliman. Guilliman is arguably the most successful and well-balanced of all the Primarchs. Why? Because he had a good dad and a good mom. I'm not joking when I say this. Konor had such an amazing, powerful impact on Guilliman. Tarsha too. Without those two, Guilliman would not be who he is. Even with the XL power that is built into him by the Emperor, if he did not have those two parents guiding him, he would not become anything close to the success that he is. Sanguinius, Vulcan. You take a look at those Primarchs, everything that they are known for, everything that they are, all their success, all their power, everything that people love about them, everything that made them such good leaders and rulers is because of their parents who taught them that. If you take that away, they are nothing. Lorgar never had that. Lorgar had nothing. Lorgar had beatings and beratings. That is what Lorgar had. And I will reiterate this again. I am not excusing any of Lorgar's behavior. He is still the first Primarch to fall to chaos. Everything that he did, everything wrong that he did of his own volition. I'm not excusing that, and I never will. He still earns the title of the First Heretic. But we need to understand why he did that. To just say that, oh, inherently, Lorgar is a bitch Lamau, that is not the point of his story. Lorgar's story is a classic story. It is about the man of faith who had his faith abused. Someone who believed in something, but was manipulated into doing something evil. Lorgar has always been a compassionate man. All he ever wanted was the truth. He wanted to learn. There's a reason why he has the name Aurelian. He's a philosopher. He wanted to understand, to learn, to embrace the world. He never wanted to be a ruler or a general or anything. He had an inbuilt compassion in him, and that is something that made him unique. But that compassion was taken by Erebus, by Lorgar, by the Chaos Gods, and twisted and manipulated into self-serving righteousness. Lorgar did not know he had a choice. Again, people always ask, why didn't Lorgar choose? You would make that choice. I would make the choice to say, fuck you, Chaos, because I know, you know, that we have a choice. Lorgar never knew he had a choice. All Lorgar knew was faith. Everything about him was meant to be preaching faith. The Emperor broke his faith. He needed new faith. So when he found it, he did not question it. Again, I'm not excusing anything that he did. He's still responsible for so much tragedy and heartache of the Imperium. But again, he did it not because he wanted to. Unlike Erebus, unlike Corpheron, who had their own self-righteous, self-serving principles, Lorgar did what he did because whether he was stupid, delusional, or anything in between, he, honest to God, believed that what he was doing was right. He genuinely thought that this is the best course of action. He believed in the faith, and he still believes in the faith till this day. Again, Lorgar's story is one of tragedy. It's someone trying their damnedest to do everything right, to always please people, to always make sure everyone is happy, to serve God and the people around him, to be beautiful and well-renowned in the eyes of both God and man, but in the end, never understanding what that truly meant. Lorgar wanted to do good, but he never understood what good was, so how could he truly accomplish something if he never knew what it was? For him, goodness is whatever the Chaos Gods told him. It's whatever Corpheron told him. It's whatever the Emperor told him. It's whatever Erebus told him. He never got the chance to make his own decision for himself in that regard. So much so that when he ends up making decisions on his own, he ends up making the wrong decisions, evil decisions that damn and kill millions. Again, because he didn't know he could make that choice. I am who I am. You are who you are. Because of the people around us. Because of the people who have taught us. Because of the things we have experienced. Lorgar never had any of that. That was not what he had. Lorgar never had anyone. Because Lorgar was betrayed by everyone. Looking into Lorgar, he is supposed to be a tragic figure. And it's a figure that you generally feel for. But with the nature of 40k and with the nature of its fans, we don't really look into Lorgar that much. Again, because he's not really a likable character in that sense. Now, what do I mean when I say he's not likable? I mean, he's not the greatest combatant. He's not the greatest strategist. He's not the greatest conqueror. He's not the greatest administrator. The only thing that Lorgar is the greatest at is, well, preaching, oratory, speaking. But to people enough itself, that is not really epic. Because we never see Lorgar giving these big, grandiose speeches in a good setting. Whenever Lorgar does his preacher man thing, we as the audience know it has the underlying current of, oh no, this is going to lead to chaos and bullshit, so it immediately taints our love of this character. Lorgar should be a tragic character that everyone feels for. But in the end, people don't acknowledge or they don't understand his strengths, his prowesses, and everything that he did. Lorgar was one of the most pivotal people of the heresy. Without Lorgar, the heresy would never have happened. And when people think about that, they immediately think, oh, well, fuck him then, he's a piece of shit. Well, yeah, fair enough, he is. But also, what we need to understand is that, hey, how invital was Lorgar? How invaluable was Lorgar? You think about it, Lorgar, in the 40 years after getting his ass kicked by Monarchia, conquered so many worlds in such a short amount of time that it put him on par with Guilliman and the Lion. He was able to nearly double his legion and prepare in entirety for the great war that was going to happen, that being the heresy. He did all of that by himself with just his legion. You take a look at Lorgar. Lorgar is not your traditional Primarch, but he's still a Primarch. Just because you can't see what he's doing front and center does not mean he's not worthy of your admiration. But most importantly, he should be worthy of your sympathy. Lorgar always wanted to do good, and ultimately, that's what you should remember when thinking about Lorgar. Lorgar wanted to do good. Lorgar wanted to be good. Lorgar wanted the truth. He wanted to be a philosopher king. He never wanted to be a warring general, he never wanted any of this. But he would eventually make mistakes that would lead him to becoming one of the greatest evils of the galaxy. Again, I'm not excusing his mistakes, but we must explain them. He never had anyone. He never had a father. He never had the Emperor. He never had his brothers. He had no one. How was he supposed to know what making a choice is, what standing up against evil is, what doing good is, if he didn't know what good was? He didn't know what evil was. He didn't know that he had a choice. Ultimately, when push comes to shove, he could have listened to the voice within him that told him right is right and wrong is wrong. But if you grow up and you never know that listening to that voice is okay, how can you look at him and say that he's malicious? At very worst, he's just stupid. And at the very best, he's tragic. He is the personification of someone's faith being used and abused by evil people who merely want power. And in that end, he should not be hated. But again, he should be pitied. Because all ever Lorgar wanted was the truth. And in the end, he never did get it. And it resulted in him forever burning it. For what truth is there now? In the realm of the maddening laughter of thirsting gods. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you guys ever know about Lorgar? Were you a Lorgar hater? Were you a Lorgar lover? And what do you guys think about Mr. Preacher Man? But I want to give a massive thank you to you guys for watching, and even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. Big shout out to my Officer Corps with Mr. Eddie V3, Mr. Major of the Void, and Mr. General Alexander. Shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. Corns Butcher, Mr. Bulwin, and Mr. Sean IRL7. Big shout out to my Corporal tier members, Tremail the Math Kitty, Mr. Lord Rosarius, and Mr. Tech Priest Toaster. And finally, but certainly not least, massive thank you to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SVW, Mr. Hotori's Curse, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Hayeda, Mr. Diego Castro, and Mr. Fortus Unum. Thank you, each and every one of you, for doing this. It means the world to me that you guys put so much faith in me, and I just love and appreciate it. So sign up today with a membership to get a bunch of awesome benefits and yet to help out your boy. But remember, whether you give me $1 or not, I would love you just the same, and this will always be free. Yes, I will. Mwah! Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. Make sure to stay faithful out there, boys and gals. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss Rangers. Mentioned about 5-6 times in this video that I am not excusing Lorgar's actions and that he's still responsible for what he did. So let's see how many people just call me a Lorgar simp and saying I'm trying to make an evil man good.